Welcome to The Kitchen Table, a conversation about faith, music, and culture. Join Shine.fm's ministry director Brian McIntyre Utter and his son Jake around the table for this week's chat.
Welcome to The Kitchen Table Show. My name is Jake.
I'm Brian.
And we are so glad to have you here today. Just a quick rundown of the reasoning behind this show. I went off to college last summer, actually. I'm going into my sophomore year this year. And Dad wanted to keep having these faith discussions. And so he would have faith discussions with me growing up in my life. And so we wanted to continue that. So we decided to put it on a podcast because we really wanted to encourage parents and children and young adults to have these faith discussions with each other because it's very crucial in a spiritual life.
You never stop discipling your own kids, no matter their age.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the reason we have started this podcast. The way our show is usually set up, we have our faith discussion, which today we have a special guest with us for that. And then we move into our Music Matters. And Music Matters is our music segment. Dad and I both grew up on music. He showed me his old music, and that really influenced my love for music and my passion for music. And so we both bring I bring a song of the week. He brings a new song because he works in radio, and so he has access to all of the new ones that I'm jealous about. And then he brings an oldie but goldie, like we like to call it. And then after Music Matters, we move into Culture Shock. And Culture Shock, as we like to say, is like a plethora of what is happening in the world and just life changers. And what do we say? The commonly Joe Schmo.
Yeah, it could be a celebrity, an athlete, or a common Joe Schmo that's making a difference in the kingdom.
Yeah, and so that is Culture Shock.
Today's topic, if you've watched the news the last couple weeks, you might have seen about Christian author, also pastor Joshua Harris. If you're my generation, you probably remember the book years ago, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which was about, the whole different way of looking at dating from the Christian perspective. Earlier this year, Joshua basically did a documentary that was called I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. He actually asked the publishers to stop printing additional copies of it, to stop distributing it, selling it, because he was sure that he did it wrong. He didn't believe in it anymore. He thought it caused more damage than good. And so that was kind of a shock to the system early on in the year.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We did mention it earlier in the podcast. What has happened in the last couple weeks is several things in his life. One, he has come out saying that he no longer considers himself a Christian.
Wow.
Now, this is a guy who was pastoring a church. I don't know if he's continuing to pastor that church or not. He's also come out recently, him and his wife are separating. And so he was, of course, attacked, unfortunately, by many, many people. But he used the word deconstruction of his faith. That is a hot word that's being used nowadays. It basically means you're falling away from your faith, in a certain sense. And I've read some articles, and we're going to discuss deconstruction of faith in a future episode, but I've read several things about how you can deconstruct your faith, and that's basically have doubts and questions and still maintain your relationship with Jesus. And so we're going to discuss that future. I don't want to go deep into that. But I did want to talk about specifically today about the whole aspect of dating and relationships and how sex comes into play, because that's what it was all about, sexual purity, with his book. And so we've invited one of my dear friends. We go back many, many years. Many years. His official title is the Dean of Dating, according to his website, which I'm going to make fun of that till the day I die.
That's all right.
Michael Johnson is from Future Marriage University, and Future Marriage University is not for married couples. It's not for engaged couples. You want to go even before that.
Yes.
So explain a little bit how
young adults, preferably not in a relationship yet, because those people can actually think clearly.
Exactly. So we wanted to look at this because Joshua Harris is kind of like the person you look to when it comes to, dating, relationships, and Christendom based upon that book all those many years ago. I've been married now, this week will be 28 years. And so dating outside of marriage is completely foreign to me. It's completely different today. Jake, of course, lives in that world right now. And so...
Well, if he is living in that world, congratulations, because so many people, they're not dating.
Yeah, okay, so what's happened to dating? Why aren't people dating?
A lot of it is fear. Actually, I'll go ahead and mention a book that I didn't write but is awesome by Doctors Beverly and Tom Rogers. It's called The Singlehood Phenomenon, and it's like 21 reasons why people are still single. Fear is a huge factor. You mentioned the Joshua Harris thing and how he's responsible for the disappointment of millions of Christians. And, I'm like, you know what? I actually didn't read I Kiss Dating Goodbye. I read his Boy Meets Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife read I Kiss Dating Goodbye. And, we're like, well, I can see how you could have derived these ideas from this book. But really, I think people bring what they bring whenever they hear a podcast, read a book, watch a movie, read the Bible. And a lot of times they walk away with what they want to believe. But these people that are fear infested, that I'm going to get hurt. I don't want to get hurt. Joshua Harris is going to tell me how I'm not going to get hurt. No, Joshua Harris didn't tell you how you're not going to get hurt. Joshua Harris gave you some biblical guidelines on how to not get hurt stupidly. And that's one of the main things is fear. Another is, now that the sexual revolution that began actually way before the 60s, it really began with the Flappers and the Roaring 20s. But now that it's just come to full force, that there's no real reason to wait for marriage to have what you quote unquote want to have. And so people just jump right to that and the hookup culture. I believe that, and I say this a lot, sex is the worst reason to get married, but marriage is also the best reason to wait for sex. So I know that kind of seems like they conflict with one another, but the bottom line is God designed us to have these sexual desires. They are good. They are wonderful. They are also powerful and dangerous, which is why the Apostle Paul, who was celibate, said, hey, I wish everybody could be like me. But since they can't, every man ought to have his own wife and every woman have her own husband.
If people aren't dating today, and you say the main factor is fear, we then look towards the institution of marriage. And that seems, is fear the same reason why many people are choosing just to avoid marriage altogether?
Absolutely. And then again, if you're not really sure you want to be married, then why are you going to be dating? I mean, unless you're just trying to be in the romantic relationships where you can have making out or some sort of physical, emotional intimacy. There's not really a reason for dating anymore. So it's all connected. Let's see if you know what percentage of 25 to 34-year-olds are married today. What percentage of 25 to 34-year-olds would you guess?
35.
35? I think that might be a little too high.
Really?
I was thinking 27%.
It's 20.
Wow.
Dang.
Wow.
That's crazy.
20% of 25 to 34-year-olds. And the current age of first marriage right now is actually, I just heard at the National Association of Relationship and Marriage Education Conference, which I attended just a couple weeks ago, average age of first-time marriage for females is now 29.
Okay.
Males is 30. So when I say 25 to 34-year-olds, that's the bracket of humanity that's surrounding the average age of marriage, and they're not. So clearly that number is going to move up further.
There are other things that sort of play in this, and it's a cultural shift in a way. I've read articles that talk about adolescence now goes up until about age 25.
And then adolescence starts.
Oh, really? Something new there. And how long does that last?
Adolescence. No, it's just a phrase people use to describe this extended adolescence.
Is that like 20-somethings that are past 25, but they still don't like adulting, or?
Yeah, pretty much. And, and we got to remember, whenever you're looking at neuroscience, because that's, like you said, people are, they're taking longer to mature. And it used to be, a long time ago, we thought, hey, the brain is just like this. Now we know about neuroplasticity and how it can change and everything like that. Well, what makes a brain change from set patterns, a deliberate decision to start breaking those synapses? Well, you can't break the synapses, but let those synapses grow weaker. So then you create new pathways that become stronger and stronger, and you become a different person through that. And that can have change in various ways. But our culture today is not encouraging those neural pathways of maturity. And even great, God-loving, Bible-believing Christian families, there might have been somebody in our church that was saying something about his daughter who's graduating from college soon, being in that place of wanting to be married. And he's like, oh, wow, that's way too soon for that. And I'm like, what? Why is that way too soon? She's graduated from college, dude. And again, everybody doesn't have to get married out of college.
Right.
There already is, and there's going to be immense consequences of a culture where the average age of marriage is at 30, because you can't reproduce to replace yourself
Right.
at that rate. And so let's forget about the Bible and conservative thoughts and old-fashioned things like marriage, and let's just look to sheer mathematics. Our culture can't really perpetuate like this.
As a college student, I have heard the myth of find yourself a steady job and like income before you get married. Is that like the culture shift that is becoming, and is that influencing the older marriage?
The older years of marriage.
Yeah, the older years of marriage.
That's a great question. It's even beyond that. It's way beyond that. It's way beyond you need a steady job. No, you need a fulfilling career first.
Yeah.
I know a guy dated a girl for 4 years, and she graduated from college, and this guy is a rare guy. He's like one of those weirdos that already has a career of his own, making money, enough money to take care of her, but he waited for her to get through college. She gets out of college. She already has a boyfriend who she's been dating for 4 years who could take care of her, but she wants 3 more years of grad school. And you're like, well, okay. And so that guy just recently, I'm like, okay, well, we're done.
Wow.
Because, part of me is like, well, that girl must clearly didn't really like that, like that guy enough.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of me is like, well, maybe she did, but God bless her heart. This idea that she's got to be something in the world means you have to be something in your career. And, that's not the message that our grandparents lived. They lived so much far humble lives of just like, well, I brought enough money home so we could pay the bills. And the wife's like, yep. And I took care of the kids and made sure. That's my best wife voice.
Nice.
And today, no, that's not good enough. Everybody has to be out in the world doing something important. So did that answer your question?
Yeah,
No,
it did. I just
it's so beyond just having a job.
even here, the culture of just having the job before. I mean, there's not a lot of couples I know couples that have been dating throughout high school and most of college, and they wait till after college.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get it for like
That's
financial.
smart.
Yeah, no, like smart thing. It's smart wise for financial stuff. It's weird.
It's a definitely cultural shift.
Yeah.
What about the cultural shift of the mentality for many? Is marriage necessary? Is the institution of marriage an outdated phenomenon?
I'm glad, so glad you brought that up, because again, that's touch base. We touched base on it earlier.
Yeah.
With just, and maybe I didn't clarify that clearly enough, but for a culture to continue, they have to reproduce.
Right.
They usually have a 2.1 replacement level, which means every couple has to have 2.1 kids to replace themselves. That 0.1 comes in from the idea that not everyone who gets married will be able to have their 2 kids. I don't think they've been using a 2.1 replacement level for decades, and I don't think 2.1 is even going to work in a culture where actually only 20% of the culture is getting married. That's suddenly your replacement level becomes 10.10 because you've got a lot to replace. But that said, by the way, 10.10 is really the same thing as 10.1, isn't it? Anyway, but there's that. There's the maturity that if you will surrender to it in marriage and not be like, oh, this is too hard, I'm getting divorced, then it calls each individual up to maturity.
Yeah.
The maturity necessary not only to thrive and survive, but actually thrive in marriage, and then the maturity necessary to survive parenting. I don't even know if you can thrive in parenting, but I would like to think, but there's that maturity too. And so marriage is necessary for that. Marriage is necessary. If you look at all the cultural breakdown, you see families where the father is not present, lower graduation levels, higher crime rate, higher out of wedlock pregnancy, higher depression, higher suicide. All this stuff results from a mother and a father not being able to stay together to raise their kids, so their kids can go get married and be able to stay together and raise their kids so their kids can go. It's a foundation of society. That's why it's such a, if it is an old-fashioned idea, then the progressives need to come up with a better plan. I don't think they do have a better plan than this. Because even if you look at the big picture, we'll have the government do it. Everybody knows. I don't care how nice a guy you are, Brian. And I think you are a nice guy. Like you said earlier, we've been friends forever. I still don't want to count on you to take care of my children. You're not here. You don't know them.
Right.
And you don't have the connection to them, and they don't have the connection to you. You listening, understand what I'm saying is totally logical. Brian's a great guy, not going to take care of my kids. I'm going to do that. Well, that's the reality of the difference between a mother and a father saying, we're in it to win it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what, we're going to figure out some bigger plan where we'll grow children in factories and have them discipled in institutional education the rest of their life. And now I'm beginning to sound like a conservative homeschool dad.
What can the church do in this cultural shift? How can the church promote the institution of marriage without becoming overbearing in a way?
Yeah, well, and you may have heard the phrase, the sexual prosperity gospel.
Right.
The trick is whoever defines the terms and sets the subject generally tends to win the argument. And so the culture is the one that said, hey, do you know what you were made for? Sex. And so then the church, already having had the topic defined, has to come in and say, yes, sex is wonderful, which it is. And so you get to have it in marriage. So suddenly it creates this sexual false dilemma for God, where the whole reason for it's like God was up in heaven after he created Adam and Eve and was like, how can I enable these creatures I have made to engage in sexual activity and not feel guilty? I shall create marriage. And it's like, no. Think bigger. And so that's the problem that we have within the church, I think, today, with encouraging a right sexual ethic. It's the fact that the topic starts with sex, and so everything has to revolve around it. We're at a Future Marriage University. We do everything we can to, maybe we have to start with that subject, but then to be like, now that we realize that marriage is way bigger than that, let's talk about that. You were made more for relational intimacy than you were sexual intimacy. This is why single people are not being cheated by God because he hasn't given them a partner. No, you weren't made primarily for sexual intimacy. Sexual intimacy is only supposed to represent and facilitate the relational oneness that is actually God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, one but not the same, one but not the same, one but not the same. They're one. That's what marriage is supposed to represent. Sex just helps facilitate that, but it is not a sexual union. God, the Father, Son, and Spirit don't have a sexual union. They have a relational union. That's what you were made for. And when we can open up the members of the church to realizing that, that helps everybody from the 29-year-old single who's like, I would really like to have sex now, to the high school kid whose hormones are going crazy, or even to the married couple where the husband's like, the sex has not been what I hoped it would be. And then he relates to his wife accordingly, which means the relationship sucks, which means less sex, so that perpetuates. But if we can relational intimacy, knowing and being known is what your heart is truly longing for. You listening right now, when I say that, I know your heartbeat is like, oh yeah, that's it. And sex is just a shadow of that.
Growing up with all the problems that I had to deal with, like just understanding that the relational aspect of marriage is what we need to really look forward to and not the sexual and physical part of it.
It's hard to change the subject after sex comes up, but we got to do it. And Brian, you're still having sex with your wife.
Yes.
Not right now.
Not right now. No.
Wait, why do we have to talk about this? Why?
Hey, we're just sitting
I don't want this.
That's not what you're living for, is it?
Right.
If people think if the sex is good, the relationship will be good. No. If the marital relationship is healthy and right and good, then unless there's some physical problems, the sex is going to be wonderful. But it's not even going to be the big thing then. And I'm sorry to embarrass your son.
It's okay.
I'm glad that you and Mom are doing great.
Yeah,
Good
thanks.
job. Good job, Dad.
28 years.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, well, thank you so much to Michael Johnson from Future Marriage University, who's been with us today. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing some insight.
I appreciate you having me on. This has been a blast being at your kitchen table here.
We're going to wrap up this part of the kitchen table and move into our segment we call Music Matters. So in Music Matters, this is what we do. We do a segment where we just celebrate the cultural and the generational differences of music. I bring a new song, Jake brings a song, and then we go back in time to our segment we call Oldie But Goldie. So new music for this week.
Boom.
The album's been out a while, but this is a new the title track to the album, which is now coming to radio. Super excited about it. And yes, we did do For King and Country last week with the bilingual song. But I'm doing the title track of their latest record. It's called Burn the Ships, and a song that came out of an experience with Luke from the band, him and his wife, and I'm going to have him share a little bit about that.
Several years ago, my wife walked through a season where she'd accidentally become addicted to pills, and having walked through that journey with her, there was so much shame and so much guilt in the aftermath. One of the things I wanted to say to her was, you can leave the past behind. Your past doesn't have to define your future, and that's really what this song, Burn the Ships, is about. It's about leaving the past behind and understanding that God has a much brighter future ahead. So I encourage you to find out whatever it is in your life that is holding you back, and the thing that I would say to you is this: go and burn the ships.
So here's a little snippet of the title track to their latest project called Burn the Ships. It's For King and Country.
That band never disappoints. I love that song. I'm excited. It's been released for a while now, though, hasn't it?
The album's been out, but with the way they do that is they release songs from the record to radio.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, play this.
So it
one
hasn't
now.
played it on radio yet.
It's not been played on radio.
Yeah, because I was like, I feel like I've heard the whole record. But all right, anyway, moving on to my song of the week. I love when secular artists bring in a Christian light into their album. And so Chance the Rapper is one of the big secular rappers.
Just played Lollapalooza this past weekend.
He literally just came off of the Lollapalooza stage. Chance is a Christian. I don't know if he's grown. I think he might have. I don't know for sure.
He grew up in a family of faith.
He did. His albums do have swear words, and he does have secular music, and so I wouldn't listen to every song on it, but one song in every album is a spiritual song. Like his last song, he did a rap to an old hymn. He had his cousin sing the hymn on the album, and then he rapped to it. In this new album, which is called The Big Day, he has a song called Town on a Hill. It's just a really cool song because he talks about how God is not lazy and that he is there present in your life. So here's a snippet of Town on a Hill by Chance the Rapper.
Thank you, Father. Father, you really love me. You really love me.
I just love the fact that this is someone who is big in mainstream music,
has a platform,
and is putting songs like that into his music. I think it's great.
One of my other favorite things that Chance does is he took a sabbatical.
He did last year.
Yeah, last year. And he would Instagram live just reading books of the Bible. It had hundreds of thousands of views. That's a really awesome thing. Chance, if you're listening for some reason, keep doing what you're doing.
We'll talk a little bit more about him and Culture Shock in a little bit here. All right, now it's time to go on our little time machine back in time for our Oldie But Goldie. So we're going to go back to 1987, which is the year I graduated from high school.
87.
Do the math. I'm turning 50. Yes. All right. So this is actually from a guy who's been doing music from way before into the 70s in Christian music by the name of Steve Camp. He actually grew up in Wheaton, Illinois.
So is he related to Jeremy Camp?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. He had the number 2 song from 1987 called Whatever You Ask. He's currently the pastor of the Cross Church, which is in Palm City, Florida. Now, he did something in the late 80s. Actually, it's like the year before you were born that...
So 98.
98, exactly. Reformation Day, which is, of course, when Martin Luther nailed the 107-point thesis on the door. October 31st is the date. Steve put out a 107-point thesis on Reformation Day in 1998, and it basically calling for reformation within contemporary Christian music to make direct, uncompromising music that confronts the world with the message of the Scriptures. Some people took it well, some people didn't take it well, and at that point, there were a lot of songs that were being produced where you could easily take out the word Jesus and put in girlfriend kind of thing. And I think we've come a long way. And I don't think the Reformation that he put together had anything to do with it. But I just think it's, Christian music where it is today, it's all worship based for the most part and focusing on God. So, but nonetheless, we're going to go 1987, the number 2 song of the year, Steve Camp. It's called Whatever You Ask.
Lord, whatever you ask, I want to obey you, to let my life be with a servant's heart.
I've heard the name before, but I haven't heard that song before.
I used to play vinyl of his from the 70s. That's how long ago it was. So, okay, that wraps up Music Matters.
And now moving into Culture Shock.
So again, Culture Shock is just a segment that we do that looks at folks that are making a difference in the culture. Now, that can be a celebrity, an athlete, someone that has a major platform, or just someone at the local level that we hear this amazing story.
Average Joe Schmo.
That they're making a difference. Today, it's, again, we've already talked about Chance the Rapper and the platform he has, and we like to celebrate when we see celebrities who have started a faith walk with Christ. Yeah. And so I just saw this new article that talks about Kanye West. Now, Kanye West, he is a publicity hound. He's married to Kim Kardashian, right? And so they have marketing PR teams that are just pushing out stuff all the time because they have to keep their profile up. That's how they make money. Like it or not, I'm not a big fan of it. But apparently, according to Nicki Minaj, who's another singer, says that Kanye West has come out saying he is a born-again Christian. I guess on a recent podcast, she does a thing called Queen Radio. Nicki said that she had a conversation with Chance the Rapper that West had told her he had turned to God in 2016 after he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He told Nicki Minaj that he is now a born-again Christian. And so Minaj says that her first instinct was, I'm so proud of you because I could see that there is a peace that is now just surpasses everything in his life. And that's what I find God gives you. This is what Nicki says. And I love it when I see men that are men enough to embrace God. Now, Chance the Rapper also been vocal about his Christian faith, added into that whole thing. He talked about him taking that sabbatical that you mentioned earlier in 2018. Yeah. And he did that when his nephew was born. He realized he had a tremendous responsibility to teach the next generation when his nephew was born. Read Deuteronomy. It's in there. It's biblical. He says, I've been brought up in a family to know Christ, but I haven't taken it upon myself to really just take a couple of days and read my Bible. So he took that sabbatical to read through Scripture. He says, we all quote Scripture and tell each other what God likes and doesn't like, but how much time do we spend as followers of Jesus to really just read and know His Word?
I actually heard something about Kanye West. I think this past Easter, he led a worship service.
Really?
Yeah. So I remember you said something and I was like, I think I've heard this before, but I just remembered about it. Yeah, I don't remember where. I think it was in his like backyard or something, but he like led a full-on worship set. It wasn't like a church setting.
Right.
So it was a lot different, but it was still church. And so it's really awesome to see that he is taking on that life, but we still do need to continue to pray because he is in a very hard spot to become a Christian.
Right. You know? And that's the deal. Lifestyle. They live very visual lives. Their lives are in public. And so when someone comes to Christ for the very first time, their life is changing. Change happens, and a lot of times they are learning how to walk this walk. Yeah. And they're not perfect, and they're learning what Christ wants for them, and the Holy Spirit speaks to them in pointing out things in their lives. And so we can't expect someone to be immediately transformed. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. But when we see these celebrities who call themselves born-again believers, yet they slip up or they make a mistake, and you're like, oh, see, I told you so. Hey, give them grace just like God is giving them grace, allowing them to work through their faith journey. Our whole purpose on the journey, and I've mentioned this before, we're all at different points on this journey, but the whole point of the journey is to keep following Christ and becoming more and more like him every day. So you can't judge somebody just because they're at a different point in the journey. Kudos to any celebrity person out there that has a platform who is becoming a Christian and trying to live their life according to him and diving into Scripture every day. So kudos to Chance, kudos to Kanye, kudos to Nicki.
Yeah.
Keep spreading the love.
And that wraps up Culture Shock.
And also brings a close to our kitchen table for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you want to get in touch with us, the best way to do that, we have a Facebook group that is on the Shine.fm Facebook page. It's called The Kitchen Table, of course. It's really a parenting group, where we can discuss further different things. We invite you to be a part of that, and we'd love for you to comment about the program. Maybe you have another topic you'd like us to tackle, or some music, or even an article that you found that is showing culture and life change in our culture. We'd love for you to get in touch with us that way. So thank you so much for being a part of it, and we'll talk to you next week.
Stay salty.
Thanks for listening to The Kitchen Table on the Shine.fm podcast network from Olivet Nazarene University. Be sure to subscribe for more content delivered each week on faith, music, and culture.